Borderlands 3 has a lot of different decisions to be made while playing, from what skills you'll pick, to what weapons you'll use, to what color you want your car to be. The toughest decision, however, is one of the first decisions you'll get to make, and that is, of course, what character do you want to play? Oftentimes, I spend upwards of 20 minutes just thinking of what character I want to use before actually playing this game. And it can be an even more daunting decision on your first playthrough of Borderlands 3, since if you make the wrong choice, you can end up not liking the whole game because you didn't like your first character. Which is why I made this video, to help first-time players, and even those who have played before, pick the right Vault Hunter for their next or first playthrough. Hey everyone, I'm Constant Canadian, and this is which Vault Hunter you should pick for your next playthrough. Before we get into the video, I want to know which Vault Hunter you were planning on playing before you watched this video. Did this video help you decide or maybe change your mind? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you find the video helpful in some way, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Borderlands 3 has 4 different characters, all of which feel very different from each other. From Amara to Zane, all of these characters are distinctly unique. Starting with Flak. Flak is going to be your Hunter / Beastmaster class for this game. Flak has a choice of a Jabber, Spatterant, Skag, or Loader as a pet, and each of these pets grants Flak certain bonuses to their stats. However, Flak doesn't have to be the Beastmaster. You can opt out of taking a pet entirely and play as a lone wolf, hide in the shadows, assassin-esque character if you want, keeping your distance and picking your shots carefully as you slowly take out all the enemies without them even knowing what happened. Zane, on the other hand, is kind of the exact opposite. Zane is the operative class in Borderlands 3, and while Zane doesn't get pets, he does get something else instead. Zane comes equipped with a myriad of gadgets at his disposal. Zane's play strategy is more of a shoot first, ask questions later kind of deal. He is essentially a very fast blur of destruction, tearing up everything in his path whether they like it or not. Mose is a well-trained ex-Vladof soldier. When equipped with a powerful weapon and her mech Iron Bear, she is a force to be reckoned with. Mose favors destructions in the form of explosives and area of effect damage, and once Mose has decided to start firing her weapons, she doesn't stop until whatever she was shooting at is dead. And you'd better say your prayers if she has a rocket launcher in her hands. Amara is the Siren class of Borderlands 3. Sirens are mystical beings capable of bending the elements of the Borderlands to their will. Amara is no different in this respect, being able to channel the power of fire, shock, corrosion, and cryogenic damage into her weapons and into her mystical siren abilities. Amara is not only able to control the elements, but also her enemies, making the battlefield her playground with the use of her powers. She is truly a force to be reckoned with. Now that we know a little bit about the 4 characters, let's talk about their combat styles. Amara, Flak, Mose, and Zane all have very different successful strategies when it comes to fighting enemies. Flak is capable of dealing massive damage as long as your aim is true. Flak specializes dealing maximum damage in as few shots as possible, having a lot of skills that boost critical and gun damage. Most of Flak's survivability comes in the form of your pet or action skills, using your loyal companion to help soak up some of the damage, or timing your action skills perfectly to escape from tense situations. While Flak may have a lot of damage going for him, he still has his shortcomings. Flak really doesn't have any skills to help with ammo consumption, so you have to pick your shots smart and make sure not to waste any ammo, or else you could find yourself in a rough situation with 0 ammo and 0 hope for escape. Zane is essentially the opposite from Flak. Where Flak is the careful, hit every shot you take kind of character, Zane is more of the shoot literally anything and everything that can be shot character. Zane has the advantage of his various gadgets that support him in battle and help him cause destruction. He thrives when in the heat of the battle, and as long as you're constantly pushing the enemy as Zane, you'll do just fine. Zane's survivability comes not only in the form of his skill tree's lifesteal, but also from his various gadgets, which help to draw aggro and just outright block Zane from all damage. While Zane has a lot of advantages on his side, his biggest strength is also his greatest drawback, his speed. Zane's skill tree gives him an insane amount of movement speed, which works out great for giving him extra damage. However, it can also make him very difficult to control. Also, with his constant cloud of destruction, it can be very difficult at times to just aim at enemies. Continuing with the trend here, Mose doesn't give a crap about ammo. Her trees are specially designed to give her constant ammo regen, meaning that she can just keep firing forever. Mose also tends to favor explosive damage in battle, shooting everything and anything in her path until the whole battlefield is just one giant explosion. Mose also has the option of jumping into Iron Bear, her Vladof-issued mech, to cause even more chaos and destruction rolling through everything in her path. Moze does have some problems of her own though, of course. She suffers from the same issues as Zane, where all of the chaos can make it hard to aim, and on top of that, survivability on Moze is a little bit more complicated than with other characters. Amara is the master of all elements. Her trees are aimed towards giving you complete and utter control over the battlefield as well as your own weapon. Amara can also double as the brawler of this game, having huge bonuses towards her melee damage and survivability. However, if you're playing the Siren as a gun character, she is also a lot of fun. As mentioned before, Amara is a god of elemental damage. She is capable of dealing all 5 elements of damage at the exact same time, making her elemental damage insanely high. Amara also has a lot of skills that help in battles with a lot of weaker enemies, allowing her elemental dots to jump to other enemies and even being able to deal damage to multiple enemies at the same time with one bullet. Amara's gun damage does suffer though, as she has the lowest gun damage out of all the characters in the game, which makes bossing with her a little bit more difficult, but her mobbing potential is where Amara really shines. Now that we know a little bit more about the characters and how they play, let's talk about their action skills. Borderlands 3 did something very interesting with its Vault Hunters, giving all of them 3 or 4 with DLC action skills to switch between at a moment's notice, so that gives players a lot more versatility when it comes to playstyles. While Flak has his pets, and they are a very important part of his build, Flak also has action skills as well. Flak has the choice of either Fade Away, Rack Attack, Gamma Burst, or Gravity Snare. Fade Away is a great skill for Flak's survivability as well as their damage. When activated and in its most basic form, Fade Away gives Flak 15 seconds of invisibility as well as bonus move speed and health regen. While invisible, Flak also gets 3 shots that are guaranteed to be critical hits. Upon firing the 3rd shot or the duration running out, Flak's Fade Away ends. Fade Away can be augmented in lots of different ways, removing the shot limit but decreasing duration and critical damage, giving critical hits a looping buff of 75% crit damage per shot while in Fade Away, making Flak's pet taunt enemies upon exiting Fade Away, and maintaining the speed and health regen perks for 10 seconds after exiting Fade Away. Rack Attack is Flak's most straightforward action skill. Upon activating Rack Attack, Flak sends forward a swarm of racks that seek out enemies and deal fire damage to them. What makes Rack Attack really good though, is that instead of using it once and needing it to cool down again, it has multiple charges, allowing multiple uses in a short amount of time. Rack Attack augments are also pretty straightforward as well, converting the rack's damage to cryogenic, granting the rack's lifesteal for Flak, adding extra racks to the swarm, and increasing cooldown rate as well as the number of max charges. Gamma Burst is more of an action skill for your pet than it is for Flak. Upon activating Gamma Burst, Flak creates a rift at the target location. Flak's pet then gets teleported through the rift, and the rift deals radiation damage to any nearby enemies. For the duration of Gamma Burst, Flak's pet will gain bonus radiation damage on their attacks and become completely unable to die, always staying above 1% health. Gamma Burst can be augmented however to make it more useful for Flak and their team. For the duration of Gamma Burst, Flak's pet will deal radiation damage to any nearby enemies. While Gamma Burst is active, Flak gains a flat 20% damage increase. If Flak's pet kills an enemy while Gamma Burst is active, they gain a stacking pet damage bonus of up to 50%, as well as restore 3 seconds of Gamma Burst's duration, and the Rift will stay active for the duration of Gamma Burst, healing any nearby players for 20% of their maximum health per second. Now if you own the 5th DLC for Borderlands 3, Flak will also have Gravity Snare available in their arsenal as an action skill. When activating Gravity Snare, Flak throws down a trap that temporarily stuns and knocks up enemies. The trap will continue to do this occasionally for the entire duration of Gravity Snare. However, Gravity Snare can be ended early to give back some of the duration as cooldown. Gravity Snare can be augmented to make it even more useful as a supporting action skill. Whenever Gravity Snare knocks enemies up, they drop ammo and health and shield boosters. Gravity Snare gains 25% duration and double the radius. If Gravity Snare is ready when Flak goes down, Flak will throw Gravity Snare at the enemy who downed him, and instead of its usual ability, Gravity Snare will now confuse enemies, making them fight on your side for 8 seconds. Okay, I think that's honestly the most complicated of the action skills out of the way. Now on to Zane. Zane has 3 action skills, or 4 with DLC, at his disposal: Sentinel, Barrier, Clone, and Mantis Cannon. But what really makes Zane special is that he can have 2 action skills equipped at the same time, at the cost of on-command grenade usage. Sentinel is an attack drone with built-in machine guns that can seek out enemies on its own, or can be told to target a very specific enemy by pushing the action skill key while it's active. Sentinel can be augmented in a variety of ways, making Sentinel's machine guns deal cryogenic damage, giving Sentinel a beam to occasionally shoot, weakening enemies' move and attack speed, and buffing Zane's move speed and fire rate per enemy hit, granting Sentinel the ability to drain enemy shields and restore Zane's in the process, giving Sentinel rockets to fire along its machine guns, and giving Sentinel the ability to unleash a targeted missile barrage at the painted area. Zane's barrier is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a barrier that protects Zane from all bullets shot at him from the front. It can be placed on the ground and picked up to be carried with Zane, and it can be augmented in numerous ways, granting Zane and his allies bonus movement speed and reload speed after touching the barrier, only when placed on the ground though, granting Zane and allies health regen, reload speed, and recharge delay while near the barrier, again, only while the barrier is on the ground, making the barrier a full dome, protecting Zane from all sides, not just the front, granting Zane and nearby allies bonus gun damage when the barrier takes damage, and granting the barrier the ability to stagger any enemies that touch it. The clone is again exactly what it sounds like. Zane makes a clone of himself to help aid him in battle, but with one downside: the clone is stuck in place. The clone can only be moved by swapping places with Zane. Zane's clone can be augmented in a myriad of ways, creating a cryogenic nova when swapping places with Zane, restoring Zane's shield for 100% of damage taken by the clone, forcing the enemies to target the clone more often than Zane, granting Zane the ability to explode his clone, dealing damage based on how much duration is left, and sharing a portion of Zane's health damage with the clone. Zane's Mantis Cannon requires DLC 5 and is very similar to Flak's Rack Attack skill. It's a shot cannon that has a short cooldown and multiple charges for Zane to fire at will. It can be augmented with having cryogenic damage instead of shock damage, exploding enemies into elemental puddle upon being killed with a cannon, instantly restoring 2 charges of Mantis Cannon if killing an enemy with a critical hit from the Mantis Cannon, giving the cannon the ability to pull enemies in as well as make them take 25% more damage from all attacks, and giving Mantis Cannon 2 additional charges as well as increasing its damage for each remaining charge left. Moze's action skills are a bit different than the other Vault Hunters, as instead of having 4 separate action skills, Moze just has 1 or 2 with DLC. Moze's action skill is either Iron Bear, a mech that you pilot and control, or Iron Cub, which is more of a companion mech. Instead of changing what her action skill does, changing Moze's perks just changes the weapon on her Iron Bear or Cub. You can choose from miniguns, Salamander, which is just a flamethrower, a V-35 grenade launcher, rocket pods, a railgun, or the Bear Fist, which is just punching. All of these weapons can be augmented in very different ways, from changing their damage type to increasing fuel efficiency. Amara's action skills are also a little bit different from the first 2, as instead of having 4 action skills, she has 15 action skills. Amara's action skills can be categorized into 4 different genres of skill: slam skills, cast skills, grasp skills, and flare skills. For the slam skills, we have the basic phase slam, where Amara jumps up to the air and slams down on the ground, dealing area damage to nearby enemies. Then there's fracture, where Amara summons fists up through the ground in a straight line in front of her. And then there's downfall, which is similar to phase slam, except for that Amara stays in the air and shoots an elemental beam down before slamming on the ground. For cast skills, we have the basic phase cast, where Amara sends forward an astral projection of herself, harming all enemies in its path. Then we have Deliverance, which does the same thing but releases 3 homing elemental balls per enemy hit. Next is Reverberation, which is phase cast but it gains bonus damage per enemy hit. And then Tandava, which explodes upon hitting a target. For grasp skills, we have the basic phase grasp, which locks an enemy in place for 7 seconds. The Eternal Fist, which is the same thing but it will seek out a new target if the grasp target dies. Ties that bind, which links all nearby enemies to the grasp target, and all enemies linked will share 35% of their damage to all other linked enemies. And then Fist Over Matter, which is like phase grasp, but it adds fists that slam down around the target, dealing area damage to nearby enemies. And finally, the flare skills. The basic phase flare is essentially a giant volleyball that Amara gets to smack around, that deals impact damage as well as damaging enemies per second in its radius. Then we have Glow Up, which turns the Phase Flare into a support skill, giving it a healing aura and allowing it to revive enemies it's punched to. Next up is Shooting Star, which makes the basic Phase Flare constantly shoot projectiles at the last enemy Amara damaged. And then there's Light Fantastic, which is the Phase Flare, but it gains increased damage for each enemy Amara kills during its duration. Each one of Amara's action skills can be augmented with her augments, causing a Nova upon damaging an enemy, confusing enemies damaged by an action skill, converting them to Amara's side for 8 seconds, healing Amara for 20% of action skill damage dealt, creating a singularity upon damaging enemies, and increasing action skill cooldown rate upon killing an enemy. Okay, now with all of that out of the way, we can move on to weapon preferences. Weapon preferences in Borderlands 3 are far more complicated than they have been in previous games, as weapon types don't really matter as much as how the gun actually works. One of Flak's skill trees and action skills gives them the incredible ability to hit critical hits on body shots, meaning that multi-pellet weapons are incredibly powerful on them. However, Flak also has a lot of gun damage and critical hit buffs, so weapons with already high base damage are also really good on them. A lot of Zane's damage is based on moving around while shooting, which is significantly easier with fully automatic weapons. Plus, Zane also has a lot of boost to fire rate, so adding those onto a weapon with an already high fire rate is absolutely insane. One of Zane's skills also gives a high chance to add an extra projectile to the first 5 shots fired after killing an enemy, so that synergizes incredibly well with single pellet weapons as it essentially doubles your damage. Mose's skill trees really favor guns with big mag size and high fire rate. Her insanely high ammo regeneration makes her able to keep firing high magazine guns for theoretically forever. Her skills also synergize incredibly well with explosive guns, though Mose can pretty much roll with anything fully automatic with a large magazine size. Amara is a bit of a wild card for weapon preferences. Her skill trees don't really synergize with any specific types of weapons. In fact, she doesn't even really need to use elemental weapons, as she's able to infuse elemental damage into all of her weapons anyway. Amara can essentially make any gun work, although this also means that there aren't any really specific weapons that she thrives with, which is something to keep in mind when playing Amara. All in all though, weapon preferences aren't really that serious in Borderlands 3. Pretty much any character can use any gun, especially with the randomized class mods in this game. So worrying too much about which type of weapon to use on each character isn't as necessary as it was in previous Borderlands games. The skill trees in Borderlands 3 are some of the most unique in the series. Gearbox really did a good job of making the skill trees powerful while still keeping them all distinctly different. Each of the Vault Hunter has 3 skill trees, or 4 if you own the Designer's Cut DLC. Flak's Green Tree, or the Stalker Tree, is full of skills that help Flak's survivability and damage. It's full of skills that give Flak health regen as well as bonuses to fire rate and gun damage. A few skills of note in this tree are Furious Attack, which gives Flak a stacking bonus to their handling, gun damage, and pet damage upon damaging an enemy. Lick the Wounds, which allows Flak's pets to revive them, which is essential at endgame by the way. Fast and the Furious, which gives Flak bonus move speed, gun damage, and pet damage while above half health. And of course the Capstone, the Power Inside, which gives Flak 25% bonus damage after activating an action skill, or 50% if they do it at full health. Flak's Blue Tree, or the Master Tree, is essentially Flak's pet tree, having lots of buffs for Flak's pets and even a few benefits for Flak in there. If you're trying to run a pet build, pretty much all of these skills are going to be useful. However, a few skills of note are Heat Bites, which makes Flak's pet reflect damage, which by itself isn't that great, but Heat Bites also triggers Frenzy, a stacking buff that gives Flak and their pet increased damage each time the pet damages an enemy. Barbaric Yawp is also another good one, and it just increases Flak's pet's passive bonuses by up to 200%. Flak's Orange Tree, or their Hunter Tree, is 100% Flak's best tree. It's got most of their damage dealing skills in there, as well as some of their best passives. Pretty much all of the skills in here are good, but a few that stand out are Interplanetary Stalker, which gives Flak and their pet a stacking bonus, as well as bonus skill damage, corrosive damage, or movement speed, depending on the type of enemy killed. The star of this tree, though, is the Capstone, Megavore, which gives Flak a 20% chance to score a critical hit regardless of where they hit their target. Flak's Purple Tree, or the Trapper Tree, is only available through the Designer's Cut DLC, and honestly it's Flak's worst tree out of them all. It just doesn't make sense for Flak's character, and it adds a bunch of buffs to their shield. The only real notable skills here are Fuzzy Math, which restores a portion of Flak's shields upon hitting a critical hit, and Take This, which gives Flak's pet a copy of their shield. Zane's green tree, or the undercover tree, is Zane's shield and survivability tree. This tree is pretty lacking, and some of the skills are even doing more harm than good. The only real worthwhile skill in this tree is Brain Freeze, which gives Zane's critical hits a chance to slow the enemy, and this effect stacks until they are completely frozen. Zane's blue tree, or the Hitman tree, is Zane's absolutely essential skill tree. It has so many skills that are essential for Zane's damage output and survivability. This tree is amazing, but some of the really good skills here are Violent Speed, which increases Zane's movement speed on kill, which stacks twice, Violent Momentum, which gives Zane bonus damage based on his movement speed, and Seeing Red, which activates all of Zane's kill skills upon activating an action skill. Most of the skills in this tree are kill skills, but that's also just kind of how Zane works. Zane's orange tree, or the doubled agent tree, is also a pretty important tree for all builds. Or at least the top half is. The bottom half of the skill tree is essentially useless if you don't plan on using the clone at all. A few skills of note here are Synchronicity, which gives Zane increased gun damage per each active action skill, Donnybrook, which is a kill skill giving Zane gun damage and health regen, which stacks twice, and the Double Barrel skill, which gives Zane's clone whatever gun Zane had in his hands when the clone was summoned. Zane's purple tree, or the professional tree, is also an incredibly good tree available only through the Designer's Cut DLC. This tree has a lot of really good skills for Zane, like Headman's Hand, which gives a twice stacking bonus of critical hit damage per kill, Commitment, which gives Zane bonus cooldown and gun damage per kill, which also stacks twice, and Our Man Flint, which gives Zane's weapons 25% extra damage while aiming down sights, as well as a guaranteed chance to apply his weapon status effect after scoring a critical hit while aiming down sights. Moze's green tree, or the bottomless mags tree, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a skill tree dedicated to giving Moze a bottomless magazine. It's going to be a staple in pretty much all Moze builds, but a couple of extra good skills are Redistribution, which gives Moze health and ammo regen after scoring a critical hit, Scrappy, which gives Moze bonus gun damage, handling, weapon swap speed, and mode swap speed while moving, Some for the Road, which gives Moze infinite ammo for 5 seconds after exiting Iron Bear, and Forge, which gives Moze constant ammo regen. Moze's blue tree, or the Demolition Woman's tree, is hands down Moze's best skill tree for damage. For most endgame builds, this is where Moze's damage comes from. There are a few skills of note in this tree, like Fire in the Skag Den, which gives you fire damage every time you deal splash damage, Vampire, which heals her for a flat percent of her health when she hits an enemy with a grenade, and Short Fuse, which basically gives Moze a chance to deal splash damage when firing any gun. Short Fuse is kind of broken later on in the game, since the damage it gives scales with mayhem level, so it can get really crazy really quick. Moze's orange tree, or her Shield of Retribution tree, is based off of giving her huge shields and damage at the cost of her health. With the use of this skill tree, Moze can get insanely high amounts of shield. A few skills of note here are Desperate Measures, which gives Moze bonus gun damage up to 100% depending on how low her health is, and Phalanx Doctrine, which is a stacking skill that increases Moze's gun damage and shield capacity per stack up to 99 stacks. This skill tree synergizes really well with the Deathless artifact. Moze's purple tree, or her Bear Mother tree, is available through DLC 5 only and does exactly what it sounds like it does. It's chock full of skills that increase Iron Bear / Cub's efficiency, damage, and duration. A lot of the skills here are worth taking, but a few really good ones are Never Gonna Give You Up, which gives Iron Bear back a percentage of fuel whenever Moze or Iron Bear applies a status effect to the enemy, and the Capstone, Running on Fumes, which makes Iron Bear not passively consume fuel anytime they or Moze lights an enemy on fire. Amara's green tree, or her Brawler tree, is Amara's main melee damage tree. It only has a few skills that actually boost melee damage, but there are a bunch of really useful skills in there if you're planning on running a melee build for Amara. A couple of notable skills are Guardian Angel, which gives Amara a free second wind every 120 seconds, Vigor, which gives her whole team an infinitely stacking movement speed buff every time she kills an enemy, Find Your Center, which gives Amara a bonus 100% melee damage, as well as a ranged melee attack after using her action skill, and Helping Hands, which gives Amara up to 40% damage reduction for 15 seconds after using one of her action skills. Amara's blue tree, or her Mystical Assault tree, is essentially Amara's core tree. Like it or not, chances are that most of the Amara builds you see will have this skill tree spec'd at least to the bottom. The Mystical Assault tree has a lot of essential skills for Amara, introducing rush stacks into her build and giving significant bonuses off of them. Some of the really good skills in this tree are Alacrity, which gives huge bonuses to reload speed based off of how many rush stacks Amara has, Laid Bare, which makes all enemies damaged by Amara's action skill take increased damage from all sources for 8 seconds. Wrath, which gives Amara bonus gun damage and doubles its effect for 8 seconds after using an action skill. And of course Avatar, which lets Amara use her action skill twice per cooldown and gives Amara an additional 10 maximum rush stacks. Amara's red tree, or her Fist of the Elements tree, is where a lot of Amara's crowd damage really comes from. Some of her most useful skills are in this tree, like Infusion, which converts a portion of Amara's weapon's damage into her action skill element. Wildfire, which gives all status effects applied by Amara the chance to jump to another enemy. Indiscriminate, which gives Amara's bullets a chance to ricochet between elements. Forceful Expression, which gives Amara's weapons bonus damage off her action skill element. This isn't a conversion either, by the way. It's added on top of the weapon's already existing damage. And Sustainment, which gives Amara lifesteal whenever she deals elemental damage with her weapons. Amara's purple skill tree, or her Enlightened Force tree, is only available through the Designer's Cut DLC and is kind of Amara's melee tree v2. While this tree is melee focused, however, there are a lot of really useful skills in it for any kind of build, like Combo Breaker, which gives Amara a 20% chance to reset her action skill cooldown whenever she kills an enemy with a melee attack. Burn Both Ends, which stacks up to 25 times upon taking damage and gives Amara up to 5% per stack elemental damage, and of course, the capstone, Clear the Mind, which allows Amara to ignore elemental resistances for 8 seconds after killing an enemy. Note that this does not affect elemental immunities. All in all, Gearbox did a really good job of making each of the characters in this game unique, but that also made them a lot harder to choose from. I hope my video has helped you make the right decision about which character you're going to play next. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see all of you in the next one.